morning.
You could maybe do a little better than that. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
That was better. That was better. And welcome to Interact 2017. And welcome to Austin, of course. Welcome to Austin. We've been hearing from you all over the last year about how excited you are to be here for these 2 days, and we are over the moon to have you here with us to celebrate the class tool and, of course, interactions. It might be the Lone Star State, but for these 2 days, we're going to be all about interacting and getting together and staying together and sticking together. To enhance that, one of the things you all should do right away is take out your cell phone. So I know you have it on the table next to you. And you should join our class community. We have a growing group of folks who are a part of the class community on Facebook. And so you should join right away, right now. It will enhance what you're doing over these next 2 days and the connections that you make afterwards. Another way to stay connected, if you look in your program on page 9, we have something called Whova. It's our conference app. So as you all are here and you're looking for information, whether that's the agenda, a map of the locations here, all of that information can be found in the Whova app. You can also connect with your fellow attendees. You can get information about people from their LinkedIn pages and really stay in touch with everything that's going on. If you go to the Whova app, you can also get to the class community Facebook page. So as we're working on building connections here over the next few days, we want you all to do that face-to-face, but also to build some connections online that you'll be able to take with you and sustain as you leave. Also in your agenda, you'll see the set of tracks that we have for the next few days. So if you're looking at Monday, right away, you'll see that we have the goldenrod color, which is organizational leadership and development. That's gonna be in ballroom FH. Track purple in ballroom AC is data collection and usage. In Terrace South, which is the light green, there's professional development and coaching. And then the bright blue would be stories from the field. And that's, again, in Terrace North. So the agenda has all of that information, as does the Whova app. Right now, I want to welcome to the stage more than 80 years of childcare experience. I know it doesn't look like it. You're wondering about my math right now. It's correct. My math is correct. Okay? More than 80 years of childcare experience coming to the stage right now. And the first person that I'm honored to welcome is Bridget Hamry. You all know her as the co-creator and co-author of the class tool. She's also the co-founder of Teachstone and the mother to 3-year-old twins, which is also very important. And joining me as well, I have Dr. Samantha Strickland here. And she's been everything from an administrator and a researcher to a classroom teacher. Now she's on the forefront of the professional development horizon in Louisiana. Welcome. We also have Paula Polito sitting next to her, and she's the director of an award-winning child care center and serves on the Louisiana Advisory Board for the Department of Education. And then Teachstone's own Rebecca Friedman, who hails from Hollywood, Florida, home of Vanilla Ice. So if she raps during the presentation, it's because she's trying to represent, okay? All right. She's also our professional services manager and brings a ton of Head Start experience to the stage today. Even though these ladies are from different states, Louisiana and Florida, they share a common thread, and that is the desire to further to enhance quality teacher-child interactions, which is why we're all here. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Bridget Hamry. Again, thank you guys for being here. Welcome to Austin. Welcome to Interact 2017.
It is such an honor to get to be here, not here right now, but here over the next 2 days, because my great privilege, and Bob, who will be joining us tomorrow, great privilege, is to hear about how a little piece of work that we did is really impacting the field. And that's not because of what we're doing at the University of Virginia, but it's really because of what all of you are doing. So I'm super excited to talk about that today. And there was a day when I knew every person who had been trained on the class. I think I did this last year. Raise your hand if I ever trained you. I see Jonathan, so I know I can. Right, so there are a few people here, but the reality now is I don't know many of you, although I look forward to getting to know you. And it is my great honor to get to introduce the folks from Louisiana, who I actually do know more about what they're doing than I do about some of the work that you all are doing. And that's in part because we have a research practice partnership with the folks in Louisiana to help understand how that work is moving forward and impacting the field. And so in thinking about my remarks today and introducing them, I just wanted to reflect upon why we engaged in that partnership and what I really think is unique about what's happening in Louisiana. And I'd say there are many things, but there are two things in particular that I want you to pay attention to as you're hearing them talk. And that is scale and focus. All right, so when we think about scale, I was just clarifying to make sure that what I was gonna say was true, and they said it was, and they even added more. So every single publicly funded program within the state of Louisiana that serves toddlers and preschoolers is a part of their quality rating and improvement system and observed using class. But it's not just that. In fact, if there is a single child in a site who gets publicly funded dollars, whether they be in childcare, in Head Start, or in state pre-K, all of the classrooms in that site are observed, even if there's only one child. And that is just a remarkable level of scale. And not only are those classrooms observed once every year, but they're actually observed twice every year, because they really think it's important to be able to be documenting change and improvement. So listen to what these folks have to say about how they've achieved that level of scale. And the second point is really about focus. So raise your hand if you live in a state with a quality rating and improvement system, right? Most of us now do. Raise your hand if you think that in a single sentence, without a lot of commas, you could articulate exactly the thing that your QRIS rates without using the word quality. Right? We have developed these quality rating improvement systems that are paying attention to lots of different aspects of quality. And that's potentially a good thing, but I think what's happened in Louisiana is through some really, really remarkable leadership and really remarkable people across the state, they've decided to do something different. And they've developed a quality rating and improvement system that focuses really centrally on interactions. So there's informational metrics available on programs around things like ratio, curriculum, and assessment. But as you'll hear them talk about, programs are only held accountable for their class scores. That is the central element and really a focus of the work that's happening. And I think the power of what can happen when you have an entire system that is working at very large scale around a very central focus, I think that some really remarkable things can happen. And I think that's what we'll hear about from our folks in Louisiana. And I just want to end with one other comment. I was at a meeting at the Carnegie Institute in San Francisco a month and a half or so ago, focused on quality improvement. And they had a keynote speaker, Peter Senge, who's a business guru who's worked in industry, but he's also worked in education. And something he said really resonated with me. He said, tools don't create change, people do, right? Tools don't create change, people do. The class sitting on the publisher's shelf does nothing. It's really about the people in this room and the people across the country and what they're doing with that tool that creates change. But he added something to that statement. He then said, however, good tools can enhance the capacity of people to create change. And I thought that just so resonated with the work that I do, and I think the work that all of you do. So this isn't about the class. It's about the provision of some tools that can really help enable all of you to support larger networks of people to create really meaningful change. And so I'm excited to get the day started off hearing about the change that's happening in Louisiana. And I look forward to meeting many of you over the course of the next 2 days to hear about the work happening across the country and across the world. So without further ado, I will turn it over.
So good morning. Can you guys in the back hear me? Wow, it's like standing room only. Wonderful. So I am Sorrentha Strickland, and I'm very excited to be here this morning with my colleague Paula Polito. Before we had that fabulous introduction from Bridget, you might have been wondering why on earth are people from Louisiana kicking off the second annual Interact conference in Austin? This is not a food conference. It's not a music conference. It's not a festival conference. Although Jazz Fest does start Friday, so if you can get a flight straight over to New Orleans, it's only an hour and a half. As you might know, Louisiana is often at the bottom of all of the national polls around education, early childhood wellness in general, health. But we're here to describe what we think is one of the most forward-thinking initiatives at the state level that we've seen in many, many years in early childhood. That indicator of always being on the bottom really was the impetus for our state to take a hard look at what we're doing in early childhood education. So we are very excited that our state brought in some very bright, very young, very energetic individuals to really take a look at our system and designed truly sweeping changes in Louisiana. So initially, there was great effort to roll out a new initiative in just a couple of years. So now when we look back and think this started around 2012, it's like, wow. We're already 5 years into this, but we have indeed seen huge changes. It started with legislation that mandated many things, but two critical components. And Bridget really hit on those this morning. So it really started with legislation that says we have to really pull together all these diverse groups of early childhood providers and create this single network. Hold individuals in the network accountable and really look at outcomes for children. So the part about pulling people together was a huge undertaking, but not as controversial as thinking about using a different measure to look at quality. So we're going to talk about how our state moved from these different siloed programs to a network of programs and how we moved from this idea about looking at quality very differently to really implementing it at scale. And we're going to tell really our personal story in Jefferson Parish, which you may know is like one of your counties. And Jefferson is one of the largest parishes in the state and one of the largest networks of early childhood providers. So this effort to begin to bring a new initiative to scale really started at the state level. The state was looking at how do we bring together these diverse groups of early childhood providers even at the state level. And the first step was to move everything early childhood under the Department of Education. So our child care licensing, for example, our child care resource and referral programs, our state Head Start Collaborative Office, all were in the Department of Children and Family Services. So you can imagine, how many of you are in states that actually took on some kind of initiative to move programs from one lead agency to another? I know it's happened in a few states, so you have some experience with how difficult that is. But when you think if you've got silos at the state level, you really can't get to pulling people together at the local level. So that was a huge undertaking that took a couple of years to transition employees, staff, programs, computer programs, big computer networks, all under the Department of Education. So that was a first step that happened at the state level. The state then said, how do we make this happen at the local level? Because Head Start was not talking to school system programs, who were not talking to child care. And so the very first step was to create these local networks. So Paula and I are part of the leadership in the Jefferson network. We call it a Jefferson Early Childhood Collaborative. And the state said, we'll give parishes a little bit of money if you can pull people together. So about 3.5 years ago, we started with a collaborative, bringing people together to talk to one another. We were very excited that the Jefferson Parish school system said, we'll serve as a fiscal agent, take this small amount of money, but bring people together to start talking about commonalities. So that was a huge first step. And I'd say, Paula was just reminding me a moment ago of some of those very rocky first days, first months, first years. And these are programs that sometimes competed against one another for children and for pots of money. So how do you bring those same people together and talk about how to do things as a collaborative network? So it was a bit difficult in the beginning. So like many of you, we have Early Head Start, Head Start. Our Early Head Start grantees in the same parish are two big entities that fund, each of them funding about 10 different programs. Our Head Start is out of our government. We then have a very large pre-K program out of our school system. And then right now we have about 70 child care centers in our network who have at least one publicly funded child in their center. So a fairly large group of people. We were very excited though, and it was a great opportunity for us. Head Start actually had started using class at that point. So we were able to look to them and say, you guys have expertise, you have knowledge, you have information, you started this, and that sort of started the relationship building. So the other piece that networks are charged with doing, that's a huge undertaking, not our topic for today. And I don't know where our State Department of Education colleagues are out here. Yeah, they don't really want me to talk about the common enrollment and registration. It's a wonderful initiative to give families one point of entry, one place for information about all early childhood programs that might be available to them based on their income, their address, and to give them choices. So huge, another initiative, but those are the two big pieces for the network. Pull people together, start looking at class as the sole measure of quality, and create those common registration and enrollment systems. So as you can imagine, being in a state that had a quality rating and improvement system that used numerous measures, we were looking at adult-child ratios, we were looking at director qualifications, we were looking at teacher qualifications, and to move to one single measure made a lot of people very nervous. Now let me just say that the other piece that made people nervous is that the initial legislation talked about report cards with letter grades. These schools in Louisiana get letter grades. And so I think there was some thinking initially that that made sense. Parents understand letter grades for elementary and high schools. Let's give that same letter grade to early childhood programs. Yeah, you're like, I'm not so sure about that. As a state, though, we've been working to sort of help legislators understand that that might not be the best strategy in early childhood. It's one thing to say I have 3 stars, but to say that I'm a C program, those sound very different. So we now have performance profiles, so a much more comfortable way of describing a report card. But we have performance profiles. We don't have letter grades right now, but we have this system grounded solely in class that really determines how that program is rated. So as a network, we said, how do we make this happen? And the state said, coming together as a network is the first step. And one of the big pieces of our state's philosophy is that locals need a lot of control. Locals need a lot of decision making. They know best about how to make it in their area. So we had to look at how could we build capacity. So we're really going to talk this morning about how we started by building capacity around class. So Bridget already told you every single classroom is observed every fall and every spring. In addition, they are observed often by the administrator on site, so an in-house observation. They might also get an observation from a contracted network observer, and then they know at least 50% of the classrooms are getting observations by a state third party. So most classrooms get more than 2 class observations per year. Many teachers get observed 4 and 5 times over the course of the year using the class tool. That is, in large part, to identify professional development strategies for that teacher. So as a network, we needed to think about how do we make this happen. We started with network leaders. We created this team, this leadership team, and started by investing in them. Having them become class certified trainers, MMCI instructors, MTP coaches, etc. We also wanted administrators and programs to have an opportunity to learn about class. I'm sure Louisiana is the only state that has huge turnover in childcare. So we knew we had to invest in the stable, the person who has continuity at that site, and we looked at the data, and our childcare owner directors, folks like Paula, they never left. They're not all as young as Paula. Some of them had been there for many, many years. But we knew we had to invest there. So we created those opportunities for them to become class reliable observers at minimum, and then created other opportunities for a select few around my Teachstone, MMCI, and MTP. We also, at the teacher level, felt like teachers needed a minimum opportunity. And so all were provided dimensions guides. Every year we offer the half-day or the full-day introduction to class. And we've even piloted this year a real opportunity for master teachers to begin to become trained as MTP coaches and MMCI instructors. We started by allowing teachers or providing the opportunity for them to complete those web-based modules, those intro to class and looking at classrooms. So we started that before my Teachstone was an opportunity. This year we've moved to my Teachstone. It has really provided a much greater opportunity to really work with our teachers to look at those resources and actually be able to see how much time they are interacting with them and have a coach guide what they're viewing and really have that web-based dialogue. So we have been very fortunate that our state created a pilot statewide. So we started early with some of these programs with local dollars, and then saw as the state was building increased capacity, the state started putting more and more dollars into it. So in my Teachstone, we've had the opportunity this year to have 2 coaches trained, and we have about 30 teachers participating. And one of the nice incentives is if they complete the minimum requirements, they get a stipend this summer. And for my Teachstone, it's $500 per teacher. So sometimes money is very motivating. But I'll tell you one of the lessons that we learned, and part of it is me personally as one of my Teachstone coaches, is that money is not often enough. We feel like this is a great program, great flexibility. I'm going to have a quick video of a teacher talking about it. But we feel like we need to build in more benchmarks or more structure to make sure that over the course of the school year that our teachers get through all of the resources that are important to where they are in implementing class.
I like my Teachstone because it gives us a chance to see how other people would answer the questions, whereas I may think the correct answer is this. There's so many other ways you can look at a question and answer it, and it allows you to rethink certain things or broaden your thought process. The videos are very helpful. You can tell they're not like acting for the cameras. It's how they really do their daily jobs, and it allows you to get better perspective on changing the way you may do things with the children in your room. I think the most enjoyable part is just getting to see how different people do different things. Babies are difficult because they can't tell you what they want. So seeing how other people may interact with them or how they pick up certain cues is very helpful when it comes to working with babies. It allows me to, it makes me think, it makes me aware of different things with the infants, whereas sometimes you just want to get on their routine of making sure they're in their routine and feeding them and sleeping. It gives you tools on how to interact with the children and make it a more enjoyable experience for them, and allowing them to interact with you in a more positive way instead of just doing that daily routine. Picking up on their cues and working from there and making it an intentional and happy environment for them, as best as you can. Well, I do like that this one is online because it makes it easier. I get, you're doing your full day of work, and then I can go home and reflect on what I've done that day, compared to the videos that we're doing. And it's also geared towards infants and younger children, which most that we've done before is for older children, which doesn't always apply to the babies. So this is helpful with infants.
So even though we are focusing on toddler and pre-K teachers, this was one of the first opportunities that our infant teachers could be involved. So we're not using infant class in Louisiana yet, but we are beginning to introduce it to infant teachers as well. This is one of Paula's teachers, and when we did a presentation at our Louisiana Summit last summer, our teachers in the audience spontaneously stood up and really gave wonderful testimony. So since we couldn't bring them here today, we thought we'd share some of the video of them talking about their experiences. So that was very quickly about my Teachstone. I'm going to turn it over to Paula, who's going to talk about what we've done with MMCI as well as my teaching partner.
Good morning, everybody. So we've actually skipped through 2 parts of MMCI, which is fine, but let me just get an idea of how many of you guys have been trained on MMCI? Okay. How many of you guys know what MMCI stands for? Excellent. So we can kind of move forward past those 2 slides. What basically they explained was what is MMCI, what that process looks like for both the instructor as well as the participant. So MMCI, Making the Most of Classroom Interactions, is a 3-day class. The person or the coach who's going into it, the instructor, must have achieved that observation training. Once they've achieved the observation training, they're eligible for the 3-day class, which I was lucky enough to have Ann as my coach. And when Ann walked in, I said, gosh, she looks so familiar. And as soon as she spoke, I'm like, you're the egg lady. So anybody who's been through the observation training knows Ann and the egg experiment. But anyway, it was a really great training. And in addition to the 3-day training and understanding how you're going to deliver the tool, it's also getting all the participants or instructors a deeper understanding of class. And I've been doing this work since 2012, and I still don't know everything about class. Every time I deliver it, every time I hear it, every time I'm in a conference with the teacher, I understand it at a different level. So this is just yet another way for you to understand it. So after the 3-day training, the goal is for those instructors to come back and then deliver that training, which is going to cross over 10 cycles, so not cycles rather, but 10 sessions, 2 hours each. So a 2-hour meeting on each dimension. And each dimension, it's basically a deeper understanding of that dimension. You know it, you see it, you do it. And that's what MMCI really does deliver in that 2-hour, because, you know, as Cerintha discussed, we've been able to explain to teachers, show them a 3-hour intro or looking at classrooms. But when you're able to really sit down with each teacher for 2 hours and dive deep into each dimension, it really does make a difference. So after the 10 cycles, each one is going to have a little bit of homework to it where they go back into their classroom. They're able really to implement what they just saw. Oh, how did this work? They come back to the session with that. So those 2 previous slides just discussed what the MMCI process looks like. The goal is to have all those participants complete the 10 cycles, and then, of course, the instructor, you video a few of those classes, submit it to your coach, so you do have support through Teachstone throughout that time frame. You submit those videos to your coach, you get feedback. So just in all Teachstone tools, you've got that constant feedback from your Teachstone rep. So the goal is to complete the 10 cycles, for the coach to get credentialed, and for your teachers to, of course, have a better understanding of class and to put that in the classroom. So here in Jefferson, what we've been able to do, again, and the way we were able to access this is through what Cerintha described earlier, is that special learners pilot. So Louisiana came to, the Department of Education came to us about a year ago, summer last year, and said, we have these funds, and we want to just increase the scope of work, and how can we layer, right? We've got to layer. We can't just say, oh, teacher, you had 1 3-hour session, get in that classroom and do it. That intro to class is just a very basic level. We want to get deeper understanding. And so this was really a great way to capture more teachers, to get it into the classroom, and to really start making differences with every child we serve. So initially in Jefferson, we had 7 instructors, or 7, whether they were network administrators, child care directors, or independent contractors trained in the MMCI tool. There were stipends for coaches, and we were able to access 68. We were able to get 68 participants with those 7 instructors. There were also, as Cerintha said, little stipends to give to those teachers, like, we know you've got all this extra time, come spend 20 hours every afternoon with us learning more about class. And so you saw one of my teachers, but just a little bit about me. I own a child care center in Jefferson Parish. My child care center houses over 165 children, and I have over 50 full-time and part-time employees. We open at 6 in the morning, and we close at 6:30 at night. Most of my teachers work 8 to 10-hour days. So when I presented them with this opportunity, I always look at how great, guys. I got to hang the carrot of the stipend in place, but I said, I got to do something more than this, right? I mean, these ladies have worked, they've busy day, kids, you know, it's just so much. How about we do this? We're going to leave, we're going to take this off of Berry Cherry Tree's grounds. I found a restaurant nearby. I'm going to feed you. That's the key. You gotta feed the people. So we had a light dinner, and it just so happened to be happy hour every afternoon. It was not planned. It just happened that way. But you know, you just gotta we got everybody out of kiddie world. We gotta, you know, you guys are professionals, right? You know, you are teachers. You are doing critical work. So we stepped outside of the center, and really it was a wonderful experience. So we were able to do that for the 10 cycles, had a nice meal, had some really quality professional development through MMCI. So that's how we were able to capture our MMCI participants in Jefferson Parish.
It was a great experience. Just to get to know actually all the new different type of learning styles, and also how to interact with the children.
What was your most enjoyable part about MMCI?
All the great information that was given, all the great videos that were shared, and basically just basically to sit back and look at the children interact with me, and also how I interact with them. It was a good thing to actually be a part of this here class, to actually get a new perspective on how to interact and how to actually become one with the actual group. But with this MMCI class, it was good to actually just have a class where you can actually sit in and actually look at videos of other teachers interacting with the students, and the students interacting with the teachers. So back and forth feedback, and actually just overall how the class was run and how the materials and everything was being put together. It gave me a lot of information. It gave me a lot of tools to use it gave me a lot of information, a lot of tools to use in the classroom setting with the children. And it was also a great class to take, just to see on the materials when you're not prepared and when you were prepared, how the actual class can actually work, and seeing also when you're not ready and prepared that the class would not work at all for you. All the approaches were different in each video, and each segment that we were in, and each class tool that we were taught. It was a great breakdown of each dimension, because it was some materials that we knew already. We just didn't understand it. Well, once you broke it down, we understood now this was an everyday thing that we always did. And knowing the new information that we can put and apply to our classroom and curriculum and lesson plans. To me, the messy play or any other type of workshop, it was always someone just verbally talking and lecturing. With this here, you had info, you had hands-on, you were a part of the group, you were participating in a group to actually see how to actually use the materials and how to break down all the things that you were doing in your day-to-day basis and the things that you weren't doing in your day-to-day basis.
Okay, so MMCI, we just discussed that, but MTP is near and dear to my heart. So my background is not education. I'm not like most of you guys who've got the degree in education, undergrad in education. I came to this field, I'm actually third generation in my childcare business. So my grandmother started back in 1972, my mother, and now me. I went to the University of New Orleans, I got an undergrad in marketing, and I got a master's in business, and here I am gonna run a childcare center. Well, that's great, you know, but I don't know anything about education. So in 2012, when class was adopted, I cannot describe how easily I understood that information, embraced that information, and I wanted to just stick with it, and I guess that's why I'm still here. But this was my first baby, this MTP work. Had no idea what I was getting myself into, but in the summer of 2015, Cerintha and I were on the phone with Cedra. Cerintha and I were on the phone with Cedra before we had the blessing of Louisiana Department of Education around how we were going to get this critical tool in place in Louisiana. we believed in the tool so much, we knew what the process involved and the coaching model and how great it would be to bring that to Louisiana. So after a lot of work, we were able to bring MTP to Louisiana. Briefly, MTP, who is MTP Coach? Any MTP coaches in here? Okay. Does any, do you all know what MTP stands for? Some know, okay, all right. My teaching partner, very intensive coaching model. It's increasingly difficult to capture so many people because it is so intense. But it looks like this. It's a 2-week cycle. It starts where the teacher will video 30 minutes of her classroom. After that 30-minute video, she uploads it to the Teachstone website. The Teachstone coach will then view that video, pull out 3 one-minute clips of the best part of those interactions, whatever dimensions you were going to discuss. We then email those or load them back up to the site. The teacher looks at them, reviews them, responds to those prompts, and then we will conference. So Jefferson Parish really insisted that we do more one-on-one, face-to-face conferences as opposed to phone conferences. It then, at that conference, you follow up, we discuss what we saw, and then our action plan as to what our next goal is going to be, what we're going to go in video. So it's a very intensive process. That takes about a 2-week time frame. Okay, so again, in Jefferson Parish, we started the process where we got coaches trained. We were able to work with 3 different networks in the state of Louisiana. We were able to, let's get to the next slide. We worked with teachers on-site, we worked with teachers off-site. So I wanted to mention one important thing. Those teachers on-site, you already have somewhat of a relationship developed with those teachers. Those teachers off-site, I had the opportunity to work with one of the school system teachers who you'll see in just a moment. And it took a little longer to build that relationship. They don't know me. I didn't know her. So after some time, though, that relationship was built, so much so that she will still text me. We have finished our cycle. That was last year. Hey, Paul, I'm about to get observed. What do you think? So we still, that relationship has still existed over this time frame. We had some goals for coaches in Jefferson Parish, goal to get credentialed. We were able, all coaches did get credentialed over that time period, still having the support of Rebecca throughout that time. We had some, obviously, strengths and benefits as well as challenges to coach. It, as I mentioned, it is extremely time intensive. We initially started with 5 people per coach. That's a huge task. We then adjusted that. Now we have 2 because these directors and administrators are wearing many hats. This is not just the one thing that they do. So it's important to learn how to juggle that and keep that accountability in place. Our goals for teachers was, again, we want better interactions in the classroom because the research has shown that better interactions relate to better outcomes, and we were happy to say that we have seen scores go up. We're going to go ahead and move to the video since we're short on time.
I guess the most enjoyable part was learning new techniques on how to talk to the kids when you're doing interact.
The most enjoyable part about MTP for me was that it was done in such a positive way. All the comments from the coach were positive. There was never any negative intent, and it dug really deep also into the content areas, the dimensions of what we were working on. MTP has made a difference in my everyday work just because of the intentionality of the program. Every time when I'm planning for a group or a small group or centers, it's very thought-provoking to think about what are the most important things to answer, thinking about making sure I don't ask yes or no questions, and just thinking about the end result and what I'm trying to get them to, and just a thought process of how to get to that. One of the main differences with MTP is that it's very personal, and when you get one-on-one attention the way it's intended in this program, it really prepares you more for your day and working with the kids. when you do your videos and you send them in, you receive prompts back and they give you positive feedback. And so then you're thinking, oh, great, I did that right. And, let me move on and try to make it better and figure out more about it. So it's just more personal. It's in a much smaller setting, and it's just better than any program I've ever done. My class scores have gone up over the past year, specifically in the area of instructional support. You expect when you're a teacher to already know the positive climate and negative climate, but the instructional support area is very intentional, and so when you go through MTP, you get more direction on the questions that you should ask or how you should ask them, and information that you're looking for from the children and the best way to get that from them.
So we did have a few surprises, and one of the ones that we were most surprised about was we were having coaches trained who had a variety of backgrounds, some CDAs, some business backgrounds. The beauty of it is that all of these coaches were able to succeed, and we attribute that success to the process and structure that Teachstone has in place. Again, it's easily understood, it's laid out beautifully, so we're all able to understand it and then put it in place. We did recommend initially not starting off in August and September, like let's get in there and train those teachers, because those teachers just needed a few weeks to get adjusted to the classroom, know their children and so forth. So we have made a few adjustments, but we are excited to add MTP as increase the scope of MTP with the special learners pilot as well. So we have been able to capture additional children and teachers with that special learners pilot. And I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca. You're welcome.
About it in the closing of this, how you are not alone in these PD efforts. Paul and Cerintha asked me, I've had the pleasure of supporting them for the past 2 years and really helping them to think about how these PD efforts fit with the organization and within the organizational goals that they're working for. So when you come to us at Teachstone and say we have all these ideas we think that we want to do, whether it is video coaching such as MTP or it's group coaching like MMCI, we are here as Teachstone to support you, to work with you, to help you figure out how we can layer these services to meet your own individual needs. So we did it one way in Louisiana. It might be different for you and your organization, but you do have the support of Teachstone and as class specialists to help you through that. So we wanted to give a little bit of time at the end for people to ask questions. So I know that you got a lot of information today. You got to hear about how Louisiana did layer these services and think about the scope and the focus as they are improving their QIRS system.
We have looked into Louisiana beliefs only about 100 times or more than that. So my question is, the struggle for us is that Louisiana believes in your composite you do not have infant class. Is there a plan to include it, or is there a way that is that a struggle? I'm struggling with the fact that you don't have infant class in there.
So,
and I love infant class.
we all do. We know that's the place to start. The thinking in Louisiana right now is that we have so few publicly funded infant classes. When you look at our early Head Start funds, those are our only publicly funded dollars for infant classrooms. So it's much bigger picture in terms of thinking about expansion of classrooms along with a look at quality. So I think one of our very tiny baby steps is to begin to include our infant teachers. So my Teachstone was that perfect opportunity because there's a whole track within my Teachstone for the infant teachers. But when the state looks at how do we make the biggest impact, it really was to start with 4-year-old classrooms, because that is where the largest number of publicly funded children are served right now, and that's our 4-year-olds.
And
Wish I had a better answer.
Thank you for that question. Thank you for your answer, Cerintha. And again, I want to thank Bridget Hamry, Cerintha, Paula, and Rebecca for this wonderful keynote and starting us off this morning. If you all have already logged into the Whova app, you know that you can get the slides from this presentation on the app, so you can locate those within Whova. If you have any questions, the bulletin in Whova within the app, if you have any questions, that will be monitored, so you can ask questions throughout the entire 2 days and know that a Teachstone professional will be answering those questions. You can also chat with other attendees through Whova. If you don't have a smartphone, you can do that from your laptop or your tablet as well. You'll notice that the Teachstone employees here have orange lanyards on, so please feel free to flag us down if you have additional questions, need help getting on the app, need help finding a place, or have a question. We are happy and excited to be chatting with you all today. As you move on to your break, please check out the agenda, whether that's on the Whova app or the print version, and we hope to see you also at the tabletop discussions during lunch today. Thank you.